Number 8. Tammy Menendez. In 1996, Tammy Menendez watched the trial of Eric Menendez on television. Eric and his sibling, Lyle, had murdered their parents in 1989 with a shotgun. At the time, Eric was 21 and Lyle was just 18 years old. The shocking story had made headlines across the US. On television, the young brothers had received attention for being handsome. They also received sympathy for the abuse they had claimed to have endured at the hands of their father. The brothers' publicity and fame led many women to write letters to them. Eric had received one from Tammy, and after some more correspondence, they met in the prison where he was held. In 1999, they got married. Their wedding cake was a Twinkie bar from the prison vending machine. Despite public criticism, Tammy has been open about the many challenges that came with being married to an inmate, especially one who was sentenced to life in prison for his crimes without possibility of parole. Still, Tammy was willing to uproot her life for the marriage, moving to California so she could be closer to Eric. According to the latest updates, the two are still married. Number 7. Carol Boone. Carol Boone met her husband, infamous serial killer Ted Bundy, in 1974. At the time, they were both working at the Department of Emergency Services in Washington. Unknown to Boone, Bundy was helping in the search of multiple women that he had in fact killed. Boone and Bundy's relationship was platonic at first. They only romantically connected during Bundy's first trial in Florida, where he was accused of murdering 2 university students. In 1979, whilst Boone was testifying for Bundy as a character witness, Bundy proposed. Florida law states that 2 people can declare themselves married in a courtroom as long as a judge is present. Bundy, a former law student, was well aware of this rule and used it to his advantage. On one of her visits to Bundy in prison, Boone became pregnant. She gave birth to Rosa Bundy, their daughter, whilst Bundy was on death row in October of 1981. Throughout their complicated relationship, Boone truly believed Bundy was innocent of the crimes he'd been accused of. It wasn't until Bundy was offered a deal by police that she realized her faith had been misplaced. Bundy was offered a bones for time deal, which he accepted. If Bundy told the police where the bodies of his victims lay, they would delay the death penalty. In 1986, Boone divorced Bundy, horrified and betrayed by the horrific revelations he'd made in his final years. Number 6. Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe, arguably one of the most acclaimed actresses in history, was married to a bad boy for a short time. In the mid-1950s, she married baseball star Joe DiMaggio. DiMaggio allegedly had ties to the mafia, which were kept quiet from his teammates and the general public. It was these connections which reportedly allowed him to retire and walk away from his $100,000 a year salary. Frank Costello, an infamous Italian-American mob boss, allegedly set up a trust fund for DiMaggio. Whenever DiMaggio would make appearances at mafia-associated venues, Costello would deposit into the fund. DiMaggio was also reportedly friends with Chicago crime boss Sam Giancana, with whom he used to play golf. In return for favors from the mafia, DiMaggio would utilize his fame to allow them even greater access into the elite celebrity scene. Monroe and DiMaggio were only married for 9 months before their divorce, with Marilyn citing emotional abuse as a factor in the separation. Number 5. Aaliyah Dana Horton. Aaliyah Dana Horton, better known plainly as Aaliyah, was an American singer, model, and actress. In 1994, when she was just 15 years old, R. Kelly, her mentor in the music industry, attempted to marry her. Kelly is an infamous American singer who is no stranger to controversy. As of 2021, he faces 21 federal counts, which include but are not limited to abuse of minors, human trafficking, kidnapping, and forced labor. Kelly worked with Aaliyah to produce her debut album named Age is Just a Number. On the album cover, Kelly is disturbingly seen in the background. Despite the controversy surrounding the two, the album went double platinum, selling 3 million copies in the US alone. Kelly had allegedly bribed a government official in order to obtain a fake ID for Aaliyah. This would have made it easier for the two to marry. However, due to Aaliyah's age, the marriage was deemed unlawful and was eventually annulled. Tragically, in 2001, Aaliyah died in an airplane crash at just 22 years of age. R. Kelly is currently incarcerated in the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Chicago, awaiting trial. Number 4. Dawn Arguello. Dawn Arguello, aged 46, fell for 34-year-old Nico Jenkins, a convicted serial killer, while she was volunteering for an inmate advocacy group. Convicted of 4 murders in Nebraska in August of 2013, Jenkins has stated that he'd committed the killings at the instruction of a serpent god. Jenkins, widely regarded as a psychopath, has satanic symbols tattooed and carved into his face. In 2015, he attempted to carve 666 into his forehead with the razor blades. In doing so, however, he used a mirror to see, which resulted in the numbers appearing backwards. He has also reportedly mutilated his manhood while in prison. Jenkins also had the name Dawn tattooed on his face, which allegedly angered Arguello. In 2019, the woman announced that she planned to marry Jenkins. In spite of his horrific crimes for which he is sentenced to death, Arguello maintains that Jenkins is sensitive, intelligent, and attractive to her. Arguello appeared to have a great interest in the criminal scene. Her Facebook profile listed a number of prison-related TV shows and books as interests of hers. It is unclear whether she and Jenkins eventually married. Number 3. Doreen Lioy. In 1996, magazine editor Doreen Lioy married Richard Ramirez in San Quentin State Prison. Richard was a serial killer responsible for the deaths of at least 14 people in California during the mid-1980s. Nicknamed the Night Stalker, Ramirez would often kill his victims while they slept and was known to carve satanic pentagrams into their bodies. He identified as a Satanist and professed his worship to the devil often. In 1985, Ramirez was caught after being recognized in the streets of Los Angeles. Almost immediately after he was arrested, Doreen Lioy felt an attraction to him. Within the span of 11 years, she wrote him 75 letters. Doreen seemed unaffected by his horrific crimes, going so far as to defend his character publicly. She described him on one occasion as her best buddy. On November the 7th of 1989, the serial killer was sentenced to death. While he was on death row, Doreen would visit him about 4 times a week. Determined to marry him, Doreen eventually obtained permission to do so from the prison. A visiting room was secured for the two of them, and the pastor officially married them on October the 3rd of 1996. On their wedding day, Doreen presented Ramirez with a platinum wedding band. In contrast, she wore a gold band herself. Ramirez had previously told her that Satanists don't wear gold. After the marriage, many of Doreen's friends and family members disowned her. No one could understand why she would make the decision to marry a monster. Richard Ramirez died of health complications in 2013. The two had not seen each other in the years leading up to his death. In 2009, evidence surfaced that Ramirez had abused and killed a 9-year-old girl in 1984. Some believe that this was just too much for Doreen, causing her to put an end to the relationship. Number 2. Carol Spadoni. In 1978, Philip Jablonski, a Vietnam War veteran with a troubled past, was convicted for murder. His victim was Linda Kimball, the mother of his child. Jablonski had had a criminal history prior to the murder and had abused women in past relationships. While Jablonski was in prison, he placed a personal ad in a newspaper. Carol Spadoni responded, and the two struck up a romantic relationship. In 1982, Jablonski and Spadoni got married while the man was still incarcerated. In 1990, Jablonski was released from prison for good behavior. This was despite him attempting to strangle his own mother in 1985 with a shoelace. Around the time of Jablonski's release, the relationship between him and Spadoni had begun to fall apart. Spadoni had complained to a friend of hers that she'd become afraid of her husband. Prior to his release, Jablonski's belongings had been sent to Spadoni's home in Burlingame, California. At the time, the woman was living with her 71-year-old mother. who'd also expressed fear of Jablonski. Part of his parole condition stated that he could not travel to Burlingame. Jablonski defied this rule and traveled to Spadoni's home. While there, he murdered Spadoni and her mother. Evidence used to convict Jablonski of these murders included an audio tape in which he described the experience. He also spoke about 2 other murders that he'd recently committed. Jablonski was placed on death row but passed away in his cell in December of 2019 at the age of 73. Number 1. Afton Burton. On November the 7th of 2014, Afton Burton and infamous cult killer Charles Manson officially received their marriage license. At the time, Burton was 26 years old and Manson was 80. The two would never officially become married due to logistical issues. Nevertheless, the public was shocked that a young woman could fall in love with someone deemed so evil. Throughout the 1960s, Charles Manson and his cult had terrorized California, mostly made up of vulnerable young people looking for purpose and meaning. The cult lived together in a commune. Manson was the leader, influencing his followers and persuading them of his beliefs. Though Manson had an extensive criminal history, he is most infamous for orchestrating the murder of Sharon Tate, a pregnant actress, and her friends. For his crimes, Manson was originally sentenced to death, but it was later changed to life imprisonment. Afton Burton had begun communicating with Manson when she was just 17, after a friend had shown her the cult leader's writings on environmentalism. At that point, Manson had already been in prison for decades. In 2007, Burton uprooted her life for Manson, moving to California from Illinois so she could regularly visit him in prison. For nearly 40 years prior to the meeting, Manson had been infamous worldwide. Burton claimed that she believed Manson was innocent, despite the overwhelming evidence against him. When Manson was put in solitary confinement, Burton reportedly carved an X into her forehead. Decades earlier, during Manson's 1971 trial, his female followers had done the same. As outrageous as the relationship may have seemed, Burton's family stuck by her side. When questioned by reporters, Burton's father said that he would never disown his daughter no matter what she did. To reporters, Manson later claimed that the relationship was a publicity stunt. In 2017, he died of health complications. Burton has always maintained the two remained close and that their relationship was mutual. Thanks for watching. Would you wait for your significant other if they went to prison for a non-violent crime? Let us know in the comments section below.